I had no idea what dying felt like, but I remember thinking this must be what it feels like to be so desperately ill. My story isn't necessarily a straightforward one or a positive one, but I think there is so much that you can draw out of it and learn from. And that's why I tell it, because I think it's so important to talk about it. So at the end of 2021, I started to lose weight, and I didn't really think much of it at the time. I thought I'd just stopped weight training. So I thought I was losing the muscle mass and the bulk. And I thought, okay, this is what it is. And then beginning of 2022, I started to notice blood in the toilet. That's not normal. Was straight on the phone to 111. They told me to go into A&E, and I'm completely new to the whole hospital thing. I've never been ill before, so I was so anxious. I didn't want to sit in there. I didn't want to sit in there in pain. I'm also very needle phobic. So when they said, let's do a blood test, I was like, no. And looking back, it was a bit stupid that I left. I discharged myself. But my GP did refer me to a gastroenterologist. I was seen really quickly. I was scheduled in for a sigmoidoscopy, then a colonoscopy, and then a small bowel MRI in the summer of 2022. Inflammation was found on all of these tests, but it was mild and no action was taken. And I was kind of just left in the community to deteriorate at that point. I went back to my GP and they did stool sample, blood test. I was really anemic. They put me on iron tablets. And my consultant actually phoned me on Christmas Day saying he was going to book me in for a sigmoidoscopy. So I was like, well, that's a nice Christmas present. But yeah, so I had that sigmoidoscopy February time. And again, inflammation was found, but nothing was done. And looking back now, it's so frustrating for me because I wish I asked those questions and advocated for myself more. So, beginning in 2023, I had a very, very stressful time. Stressful family events happened. I was managing a restaurant at the age of 19. I had just moved in with my boyfriend, who I'd been with for a month. And as we know, stress is such a massive trigger for IBD. And my symptoms on a scale of 0 to 10 were probably about an 8 at this point. I was really deteriorating. I had a solo trip to Costa Rica booked. I'm very comfortable in my own company. I was so geared up for the trip and it was incredible and I got to enjoy it a lot, but I had to cut it short. And I remember on the plane home, I was on that toilet in the plane for hours in agony, bleeding, vomiting. I thought at that point, I had no idea what dying felt like, but I remember thinking this must be what it feels like to be so desperately ill. And I don't know how I survived for the next 2 weeks because I couldn't keep a morsel of food down. I dropped 3 dress sizes. Consultant tried me on mesalazine in case it was inflammatory bowel disease, but I couldn't keep it down. Told him this, and then nothing was done in an effort to help me overcome this, to provide me with another source of medication. And again, I was left. I started losing my hair. Um, and I presented to my consultant in the June of 2023 with textbook Crohn's. I mean, it was so obvious looking back. Unexplained bruising, hair loss, bleeding, weight loss, going to the toilet of upwards to 20 times a day. I even had the extra manifestations, so the skin patches and the problems with my eyes. And he said, let's do another stool sample. See if your inflammation is still over 600. If it is, I'll put you on steroids. And then he wanted to check for hemorrhoids, which I felt like I'd been shot in the chest because that was the first thing they did. They always check for hemorrhoids, the first thing they do. And, that was nearly 2 years ago at that point. 3 weeks later, after my stool sample, my blood test obviously came back as horrific at that point. They tried me on prednisolone tablets. I was on the 40 milligrams. And a week to the day that I started them, I ended up in A&E. I took myself there. I was really, really poorly. I let them do the blood test. I persevered because I knew just how ill I was. And my mum kind of held me down at that point and said, you need to just get it done. And remember the blood results coming back and the rush and the panic of all the doctors. just sat me in a chair. I was hooked up to fluids, antibiotics, steroids, pain relief. And yeah, I was hospitalized for 3.5 weeks. It's not a straightforward journey. So